And I think we're ready to begin whenever you're ready.
Okay, sorry. Good afternoon, everyone. We want to get started with a moment of silence. Okay, are we ready to begin? I can't really see anybody, so.
I think everyone is on mute, so I believe so.
Okay, nobody has their cameras on, so I can't see anybody. Make sure we're good to go. So hopefully I'll try to make this quick today because I know we've got more meetings after this one. Just a quick overview of some of the departmental requests that we've had. We will have meetings with department heads in the next 2 meetings that we have, but just to kind of give you an overview of some of the requests that we're receiving. We can go through those today for the departments, I think, that we'll schedule for next week to come and talk to y'all. So if we just want to, just like I said, a brief overview. We received approximately $20 million in additional requests above everyone's base budget. So kind of consistent with every other year. That does not include police's budget. We're still working with them on there. So I don't have those numbers included in that 20 million. So it'll probably be more than that once we finalize that. And there's some things that we're still working on. Rents and property insurance. It's always working with the IRF and getting those property insurance numbers finalized is always somewhat of a challenge. So that number will change a little bit. There's been a little over 60 full-time positions requested in this budget. Of course, that also does not include police. So I'm not exactly sure if they're requesting any positions or not, but right now it's a little over 60 additional positions that are being requested. And I sent you last night very late, and I apologize for that. Some departments, housing, community development, human resources, livability and tourism, parks, planning, preservation and sustainability, and recreation. I sent you the detail to all of their requests last night. So
Amy, Councilman Gregory has his hand up.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Yes, Amy, on the previous screen, you showed 60 new full-time positions.
That's right.
That would be over and above the vacancies that the departments have currently.
That's right. So it's brand new positions that are not budgeted for.
Okay, thank you.
It doesn't take into consideration any vacancies, Councilmember Gregory. So
Okay.
That's
Thank
one
you.
thing we'll have to talk about as we go through with these positions. So, you know, how we handle that.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome. So those were, I was just going to briefly, like I said, just to give you an idea of what they're requesting so that when we meet with them next week, you'll have an idea and have some time to review to ask whatever questions you may have. So housing community development, their approximate increased cost or what they're asking for is around $347,000. Majority of that is relating to personnel and professional and contractual services. I think, the last couple of years, probably 4 years at least, they've been asking to shift the cost of some of their positions from grants to the general fund. We've done a little bit of that, but the past couple of years we have not. They were asking for a concierge to help with the development process for affordable housing. We also had a request from the planning department for that same position. So we just need to have a conversation about that, where the best location would be for that position. And then contractual support for a local nonprofit that would fund a rental coordinator position, and then a consultant to assist the city with establishing a land bank fund. So those were the major things that they were asking for that make up that $347,000. Human resources and organizational development, theirs was a very small request of $67,000, mostly for advertising for recruitment, professional and contractual services for training, hospitality supplies for job fairs, and supplying lunch for training and orientation attendees, and then a salary for a summer intern. They also had requested little over $1.6 million or so, which I have not included in here because we had talked about a kind of a step program for non-sworn, but that needs to be vetted a lot more before we really put that in here. So I didn't include that for now. So there's just a lot of discussion we need to have around that. Any questions? Okay, livability and tourism. They're requesting around $171,000. It's mostly for the rental registration program pilot, which I know has been a topic of conversation at council for the last few meetings. So that's basically would support that program, and also $50,000 for assessment and stabilization of dilapidated structures. So we're seeing more and more of that, and they just needed some extra funding to help with that and help shore up some of those properties. Parks has a lot. Their request is around $5.2 million. Majority of that is they're asking for 14 new positions. They're asking to increase their agricultural supplies line item, facility maintenance items. They requested 1.7 million for repairs and maintenance of specific facilities and fountains. 552,000 of that we've already allocated in general fund reserves, which is part of what we talked about last week with the capital improvement plan and some of the other projects that we have that are non-capital related. 950,000 we will utilize the funding we set aside for deferred maintenance. So of that 1.7, we already have $1.5 million funded. They are requesting a street tree inventory professional contract. And so they're estimating that to be around almost $500,000. And we had discussed at one point utilizing ARPA funds to get that done. And then part of the climate action plan initiative was battery powered blowers. So they have asked for $110,000 in their budget to purchase those. Any questions? Okay, planning, preservation, and sustainability. They asked for about 1.5 million. 355 of that is for the Entrepreneurial Resource Center. Sorry, I can't speak today. That's the James E. Lewis incubator space. So that funding would be for that. Professional services, they want to continue, obviously, do phase 2 of the new zoning ordinance. Phase 1 was funded by ARPA this year, so they would need the additional 500,000 for next year for phase 2, and 200,000 for a downtown peninsula plan, and then 100,000 for a historic architectural inventory survey. And they've asked for that every year since 2017. And they also asked for 4 additional positions as well. Hey, Jennifer, the mayor just texted and said somebody needs to let him in.
All right, I think he's joining from his iPhone.
Yes. Starts with 709. Okay, any questions on that? I'm sorry. Recreation, their request was about 1.7 million. 1 million of that was for recreation operations, and 694 was for the golf course. Majority of their increases for returning line items back to pre-COVID numbers. That would include overtime, professional services contracts. They're pretty much fully back in the recreation program, so they need some additional professional service contracts in order to run their programs. The revenue would offset a lot of those costs. And then also we need to do some adjustments to part-time salaries since they are fully back and they need additional part-time hours. And then they're also asking for funding to replace equipment, which we haven't done in the last couple of years. Any questions? Okay. And then just for a budget process update, we'll meet next week on the 14th. that's when we'll start meeting with department heads. We typically have met with the larger departments that have the largest requests. So we're planning to go over parks, planning and recreation at the next meeting. Housing, community development, human resources, and livability. So requests are fairly small. So we wouldn't typically have brought them in for you all to meet with, but we can if you'd like us to. So just let me know that. And then the other question I had is if you wanted to meet in person or keep it via Zoom. So if y'all just
I would prefer we meet in person.
okay.
So
I
Amy,
would prefer we Zoom.
this is Jennifer. We would just need to make sure we can do that because we can't live stream and do hybrid meetings anywhere we have meetings. We have to work with IT to make sure that we can do that.
Yeah, I thought when we talked about it, Jennifer, that because this was ad hoc, we didn't necessarily have to worry about doing that. It wasn't like one of our regular standing committees necessarily, but we can talk about it. So we would have to do it at city council chambers, right? And get with IT in order to do a hybrid, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. And then just following, does anybody have any questions about any of that? I know I'm kind of going through this probably too fast, maybe, I don't know, but let me know, slow me down.
Yeah, slow down.
Okay, well, do you want to go back through any of the departments? Are you good with those or for now?
Amy, just a recap on the 694 for the golf course.
Yes.
That is for the bathroom facilities.
No, that's the operations of the golf course.
Okay. Thanks.
You're welcome. Okay, so what we had, some of the things we said we would follow up on for this meeting from our last meeting was our tourism revenues. Councilmember Shade, you had asked about the quarterly, sort of when our peak times are.
Yes, ma'am.
So we have that information for you. So for state accommodations, the reporting quarters are a little bit weird with the state because they report back based on when the cash is, they receive the cash from the hotels, not necessarily when it's earned. So it's a little weird. So the reporting quarters are December to February, March to May, June to August, September to November. And so in 19, you can see it, these are all the numbers and where our biggest quarters are basically, which is obviously March to May, always March to May for us.
Amy, that's a huge jump.
Yeah.
And I know COVID had a lot to do with this, obviously.
Mhm.
But in the second quarter from 3.1 to 5.2 between 2019 and 2022.
It is. Yeah, we've been pleasantly surprised every quarter that we receive that accommodations tax check. Now, some of that is going to be that Robin Hood sort of, and also remember with the one larger hotel that didn't pay. So some of that is because they paid part of last year and this year. So some of that number is a little bit skewed, but it's still much higher than we anticipated. And then municipal accommodations, it's the same. Slowest quarter, it's January to March. Those run on normal quarters for us for municipal accommodations and hospitality. So you can see typically our second and third quarters are our largest quarters.
So we're $2 million short of the total of 2019, and we're halfway through the year.
That's right.
It looks like we'll exceed 2021 expectations if these trends stay consistent.
Mm-hmm. Absolutely. We didn't put the budget in, not like what we budgeted. This is just actual numbers. So.
Well, thank you for doing that, because that really does provide a good benchmark snapshot.
And then same with hospitality fees.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it runs pretty much. Hospitality isn't really seeing much of a difference, you know, in any of the. It runs pretty consistent from quarter to quarter. little bit higher in the third quarter. Anyway. Everybody good?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay. And then the capital improvement plan, it's not complete yet. We're waiting still on some costs for some projects that we discussed the last meeting. And then we've also been comparing the capital improvement plan with the recently funded recently funded non-CIP projects to our Parks and Rec master plan. So we can begin discussions with council on that. And we'll have a draft of the capital improvement plan, hopefully final draft of the capital improvement plan to bring to y'all in October to go through. And then that should be finalized. And then we talked about having some information regarding projects by the different areas of the city. So I was just going to go through that with you if you're ready. So percentage of cities capital project. Now this is all based on the CIP. It doesn't include any of the projects that are non-CIP that we talked about last week. But percentage of the city's capital project count and budgeted cost by geographical location. So you can see Daniel Island and Kanehoy has 3 projects at a cost of 14.2 million. James Island has 2 at a cost of 6.1. Johns Island has 3 projects at a cost of 22.6. And it has 34 projects at a cost of 515. West Ashley 21 at a cost of 110 million. Any questions on that?
And Amy, those run the gamut of all kind of capital projects, right?
So I do have it by function too, as we go forward, so you can see by function. But this is, this is the budgeted cost of the projects and the number of projects, which is separating out the previous slide, basically. And then that just kind of shows the number and the budgeted cost by location as well, just in a pie chart that might be a little bit easier to kind of look at visually. Any questions so far? And then projects by function, I think, because you really need to look at those high dollar costs and see what those projects are. But for Daniel Island, when we have on the capital improvement plan, it's all by function. So the yellow or mustard color is public safety, the lighter blue is public service, and dark blue is culture and recreation. So for Daniel Island, Kanehoy, you have the fire station 20 public safety of 8.7 million, public service at the 4.8 million for Beresford Creek Bridge, and then the St. Thomas Island Drive Noah Creek Crossing is the culture and recreation darker blue pie piece. And then James Island, it's cultural recreation and public service. So it's a Central Park drainage project in Plymouth Park. And that Plymouth Park number might change a little bit as well. That's one of the ones we're working on. Johns Island, mostly it's drainage and public safety mostly. That's the fire station number 23, and then Barbary Woods drainage. And then we have some funding put away for some improvements to Angel Oak. Peninsula, the darker blue, culture and recreation. Obviously, the public service is the light blue. It's mostly drainage projects. So gray, I know it matches the background too much, but that's the municipal operations center and public safety and urban and community development, which I've kind of detailed them out. So public safety is the Cannon Street Fire Station, Central Fire Station 2 and 3, Hughes Street Fire Station. So those are that 21.7 million is all fire stations. And then public service, it's mostly drainage. You have Alberta Long Lake, the Earhart Tunnel, Puget Street, Limehouse Brick Arches, Market Street. Then there's the seawall, which is not a drainage project, and Spring Fish Burn. And then enterprise fund was 6.8 million. It's parking garages, it's the ballpark, it's the city market hall, shed, tuck pointing, and the Shepherd Street lot. And then culture and recreation for 109 million. It was Brittle Bank. That's the 1 million we just put aside for the playground equipment. Cooper River Bridge, multi-use trail, the IAM, Lomboro Dock, the Shaw Community Center. And then urban and community development was the Morrison Drive edge conditions, the Hope Center, Puget Street streetscape, and Market Street streetscape. So that's all the peninsula.
Amy, this is Dudley. Could you go back to the Longborough dock? The previous one, I think it is. Yeah, that one. Do we know specifically what we had allocated for the dock?
I can't remember. I think it was maybe $800,000 we have set aside for that, Councilmember Gregory.
Okay, okay. Thank you.
You're welcome. And then for West Ashley, it's mostly cultural recreation, public safety, and public service projects. Public safety, it's the Ashley Hall Fire Station, and CPD fleet operations. And then public service, it's obviously drainage projects. You have Church Creek, DuPont, Wapoo, Forest Acres, Fort Royal, Lake Dotter, West Bunny, and Windermere. And then culture and recreation, we have Ashley River Crossing Bridge, WPAL 25, Folly Park, Carr Richardson, Charleston 9 Firefighters Memorial, Mulberry Park, Park Shore Park renovations, and then the bikeway, and then several different projects along the Greenway as well. I just didn't list them all out separately.
And Amy, Councilmember Shealy has his hand up.
Yes, thank you. The Ashley Hall Plantation Fire Department, that is to make repairs of the existing, or is that starting to go toward the new fire station?
There is money set aside for renovations, but some of it is also to replace it and purchase land as well.
Okay, great. Thank you.
The money that we have set aside for the renovations, Councilmember Shealy, we would not be able to utilize all of that. So we're just reserving it for whatever future needs we might need that for.
Okay, thank you.
And that's really all I had for today. I guess I went through that really, really fast and didn't mean to. Does anybody have any questions?
Yeah, you just spent a lot of money really fast, Amy.
I did. Our whole entire capital improvement plan is over $600 million. So it's a lot.
And I think that when we have our public services meetings and Matt goes over these public service type projects, he gives us a little bit more detailed background as to sort of where we are in the development of some of those projects. So this really helps Amy give us a broad overview of where we're going with that. And I appreciate how you've broken this down for us. Thank you.
Is there any other way that you would like to see this, or is this good?
And Councilmember Waring has his hand up as well.
Oh, thank you. Does this have any room for what came in front of us last month? Came from the citizens and obviously on television and all of that, but the restrooms on the muni golf course, is that going to be anywhere in here? That's something we would come back and add later on.
So that's where I was saying there are some projects that we talked about last time that we were getting additional information and cost to. And so that is one of those projects that we're working on.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Amy, likewise, we also talked about lighting, I think with some of the tennis courts. That
Mhm.
would follow the same category that Councilman Warren just asked about.
Yeah, so those are already set aside, Councilman Rashay, but those aren't capital. They don't reach the threshold of a capital improvement to be included on the capital improvement plan. But we did put funding away for both Maybank and the Charleston Tennis Center for lights.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
I got one other quick question. Can somebody give me a little bit of information on this Mulberry Park?
I hope Jason's on here. I can't, I can't.
That's okay.
Let me see
if he's on it,
anybody's on here. Councilmember Appel might be able to. Yes? I
Thanks
just
for putting
totally
me on
threw
the
you under the
spot.
bus. I'm sorry, I just
I
realized
couldn't-
I threw you under the bus on that one. I'm sorry.
I've lived here practically my whole life. I couldn't tell you where Mulberry Park is. I'm embarrassed to say it, but I'll be honest.
That's
You've never heard of Mulberry Fields off Forever?
I know
They
that
got
it's
strawberry fields.
the strawberry fields. It's going to be a playground, but what we call it is a turtle. But it's in the duck turtle pond, something like that. That's where that is. And there's going to be a playground and maybe a picnic shelter and things like that there.
Councilman Warren, isn't that
I
back
did,
behind
too.
Chick-fil-A there? I believe
I
that's.
know you're talking about over in Ardmore. That's Mulberry
Yeah,
Street back there.
Yeah, that's Mulberry Street. That's where I was thinking it was, that pond that's back behind Chick-fil-A.
And you know, we do have
Amy, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Oh, thank you. By the way, I can hear y'all so much better in the car than I can on my computer. Everybody's coming through crystal clear. Mulberry Park is on Mulberry Street, which is, as somebody just said, the duck and the turtle pond. The Clemson students just built a picnic shelter over there. And so the funding for the rest of the park is to do a playground, a little walking trail around the ponds, and kind of do a crosswalk across Mulberry Street and some other improvements, just honestly to finish it out.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. That's what I thought it was, but I thought I would ask.
And Councilmember
Yes, sir.
Gregory has his hand up.
Yeah, I have a couple of questions. The Ferguson Village Park, that wouldn't be a part of this budgetary process?
It wouldn't be considered a capital project, Councilor.
Okay,
So,
okay. And then the next question is probably a discussion I need to have with Jason regarding the land that Bishop Jackson
mhm.
provided to the city to try to do a passive park. I'll talk with Jason further on it. Okay,
Yes.
thank you.
Well, I got one other question, Amy. With the you know, the bike, the bike pedestrian bridge, you know, well, I guess that's the Ashley River crossing. I'm sorry.
That's right.
Good deal.
When we bring everything back in October, when we have the final draft of the capital improvement plan, we'll also have all the other projects, you know, that aren't considered capital projects, so that you all know, like we talked about the last time, just so you have an idea of what other things are funded as well.
Thank you.
Mhm. So if we can do it, I don't know. Like,
Yeah, if I may.
we're trying to kind of look at the Parks and Rec master plan and going through that, just look and see how much of that we've already have at least partial funding for some of those projects. So that might be an exercise if I can get that done by then.
If I may, Councilman Waring, there is a beautiful presentation on the Carr Richardson Park that Meg and Neighborhood sent out in her monthly report.
Uh-huh.
Beautiful, beautiful stuff. So
Thank
if
you.
anybody,
Haven't seen that. That's good.
yeah, if anybody wants to really see that, Meg's report really shows great pictures of it, and it looks pretty close to completion. Sorry
Well,
about that.
I got a leg up on you. I go over there about a couple of times every week. So I was just over there Tuesday. So
Yeah, well,
I'm gonna
she's,
start charging everybody admission to come over there.
Hey,
There's
Councilman Waring, if you want to take a boat ride over there, I'm glad it gets you a view from the water. It's absolutely beautiful.
I'm gonna take you up on that.
But you gotta bring the beer.
Well, man, I can bring the tea. I don't know about the beer.
as long as you don't bring it to council.
So y'all, if I may just add one comment, how many millions of dollars did you say, Amy, all these capital projects totaled up to?
It's over 600 million.
So when you hear Jason and Edmund, they're not really complaining. They're just letting y'all know that we're kind of at a capacity for just being able to get the stuff done with the folks that we've got on hand. It's because we're doing so much here. I mean, that's a lot of capital improvements in a lot of different areas, and of course, stormwater is part of it too. So there's more than just Jason and Edmund's team. It's also stormwater and other folks in the city. But I tell y'all, it's remarkable the amount of work that we're actually getting done. That they're doing a great job. Thanks.
It's about $668 million to be more specific. 334 million of that is drainage projects, or I should say public service projects.
And Councilmember Parker has her hand up.
Thank you, Jennifer. And y'all, I'm not on this committee, so I don't know if I'm allowed to speak or not.
Yes, ma'am, please.
Okay.
You are.
Okay. All right. So thank you, Amy. I just have a question in this sort of accounting 101, but I am just curious, what are the funding sources for the capital improvement projects? Is that an easy enough sort of spreadsheet or graph of where the money's coming from to that is supporting these capital improvement projects? Specifically because I saw you did the geographical maps for where the money is allotted in which location. Is that is that something I can find out, or, geographically where these are being funded, where the capital improvements are being funded from, and what sources and how much from each geographical location? Does that make sense?
So you can get that information. I think we gave you a copy of the budget book, and it won't be the most current one that we're working on, but the capital improvement plan is in the budget book, the very nice, pretty one that we do. And it tells you all the funding sources for all the projects. And that capital improvement plan in the back of the budget book.
Sorry, and that's from the file that you gave me last year.
That's right.
Okay.
And we haven't added that many new projects, Councilman Parker, so it will still be relevant. But when we discuss this, the final draft, it also has all that information. So every single project, it will tell you what the funding sources are for each one of the projects.
Okay. I think and I'm sorry to take up y'all's time, but it just throwing this question out there pretty bluntly, but obviously James Island is on the low end of the capital improvement projects. And I just wonder what resources are coming from James Island into these capital improvement projects as opposed to being put into James Island. Does that make sense? Pretty forward question, but I might as well.
The projects that are funded on James Island are from general fund dollars.
Okay. All right. So I'll just take a look back through that budget and see where these sources are.
I can send you, I'll just email you the one, so you don't have to go through the book. I'll email it to you.
Okay. All right. Thanks.
You're welcome.
And Councilmember Gregory, I think, has his hand up.
Yeah, just to sort of respond to Councilmember Parker, I think that, we need to be pretty proud of what the three of us have already brought to the island, especially that $5 million drainage project on Central Park Road. So, you know, as council members, in terms of bringing resources to the island, I think we're doing okay. Could we do better? Yes. And I do think that it's a legitimate question to find out how much money James Island puts into the till and how much we get for it. I think that's really the basis of your question.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you for making that short and sweet because I couldn't find a way.
It's okay. Bye-bye.
And Councilmember Appel has his hand up.
Councilmember Rappel.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. You know, they teach you in law school not to ask a question in a deposition or certainly in a trial you don't know the answer to. So with all that being said, piggybacking off of Councilman Gregory's question right there about sort of the relative, you know, property tax generation relative to investment. Do we have that information?
No, we don't.
That, and I would just say that is just extraordinarily important information, I think, to have as we continue to move forward. And we don't have it now. It's something we ought to put on our wish list, because I think there's this sense out there that as our friend one Carol Jackson used to call it, the burbs subsidize downtown. I think what people will find out when the analysis is run, this is just my working hypothesis, is that it's the other way around, and it's the peninsula that subsidizes entire districts around here. But I think it's going to be very interesting to see once all that analysis comes in, because I just think that, you know, as we head into redistricting conversations and other types of discussions and policy discussions over the coming years, having that information is just going to be very helpful, because I'll tell you that 6% stuff goes way, way, way farther than 4% assessments do, at least on the property tax side. I can tell you that. So information worth having for sure.
Yes. Thank you. Thank you for adding that, because I think that's exactly sort of the point that I was trying to get. Having that type of data, I think, would be helpful not only for me, but for citizens.
And Councilmember Waring has his hand up.
Thank you. I think that's good information, but if you're going to do it for the general fund, you got to do it for the other areas as well. Because I don't know, I always say roughly about 50, maybe 55% out of every dollar comes from property taxes, and the balance comes from someplace else, okay, even if it's that much. And when you look at those other funds, in particular, hospitality and accommodation sales tax fund, it is embarrassing what has gone to West Ashley, James Island, to a lesser degree, Johns Island. So, but yeah, we need that information.
So I think we can look at it from different, get it easier based on various coding and information. Not everything we have is coded, for example, by city council district, but most everything I bet is coded by zip code, which mostly, you know, at least separates James Island, West Ashley, Johns Island, down, you know, the peninsula and the major sections of town, even when you're looking at like business license revenue and all like that. So we'll see how that can be sliced and diced.
It's going to have to be, the county would have to run us reports. I mean, when we get our property tax revenue, you know, it's like there's a big pot that comes from the county, and then there's like, we have the James Island PSDs and things like that. So we get separate reports for those areas, but because we're one city of Charleston, it's never been reported to us like that, because we're the city and we provide services to everybody in the city limits, right? So, I mean, that would be a conversation with the county if we really want to go down this road and separate it out and have that have that fight about who's paying more and all of that. I mean, I can talk to the county about it, see what we can do.
So do we want to go to war?
No.
I agree with you, Mr. Mayor.
Well, I hope, sorry, jumping in, Councilwoman Parker. I certainly didn't bring it up to start some type of, but I think it's just good, kind of like Councilmember Appel said. I mean, I think let's put it this way. That's the feeling over here on James Island, like you just said, Councilmember Waring. So I think just having all the data that we have in so many other arenas, that this would just be a tool to know,
Yeah.
to be helpful.
If I'm not mistaken, this is Dudley again. If I'm not mistaken, I have seen from our budget office when things are going in specific districts. I mean, they identify the districts. If I'm not mistaken, I have seen a chart that when projects are either being proposed or even funded, it says specifically what district it's in. Like an example, Ferguson Village, District 6. For example, Central Park, okay, drainage, District 6. And if you look at many of the projects that are brought before us, we can sort of tell what district it's in, but it still misses that point to going back to Councilmember Parker, how much you put in the till to get what you've got, and whether or not kind of balance.
Councilmember Gregory, we can do that definitely for the projects that we do, right? But when it comes to general services, governmental services,
Right.
no, I can't do that. And same with the revenues coming in. I mean, it's easy to say, okay, this project on James Island, Central Park, we're paying for with drainage funds, and that's in this district. Like, I can do that for projects. That's not a problem. I'm just saying for general fund revenues coming in, property taxes coming in, and our general government services that we pay out, I can't separate it by district. It would be easier to do that with revenues, but I definitely can't do that for expenses.
It would be an unbelievable undertaking for one.
Right. I mean, it would, the revenue side, we could probably do it with help from the county, but I can't do it expense wise because we're not set up, our accounting system isn't set up that way in order for me to say this invoice that I paid went to for council, for council district, whatever. We're not set up that way.
Understandable.
Yeah, I would just say that the revenue side, I agree, is going to be the much easier analysis to take on. And that's going to tell a lot of the story. I understand how you can't apportion and slice and dice police and fire services and things of that nature that easily. But I mean, we know what we take in every year. I think if we could have sort of a visual depiction overlaid on a map showing where the raw dollars come from, and to Councilman Waring's point, have it broken down by property tax and other revenue streams, I think that on its own would tell a lot and be very informative to us. And in fact, I've actually seen very similar visual depictions like this in other jurisdictions and other matters that I've been involved with over the years. I'll connect, Amy, maybe you with some of these folks that that have experience doing this, and there's some pretty cool technology out there that can put all these different pieces together.
You're jogging my memory. I've seen a depiction like that, Councilmember Appel, and it was done for Charleston County, and it showed like a taller stack where the property taxes were coming from.
That's exactly right.
And the big stacks were on Isle of Palm, Sullivan's Island, Kiowa, and the peninsula of Charleston was where the main property taxes of Charleston County, not just the city, but overall in Charleston County, were coming from, if I'm not mistaken. And a little little peaks here and there, but those were the four kind of main areas where the bigger revenue was coming from. But I do want to share, since we're on this kind of general discussion, that we have really made a good faith effort in almost every expenditure category to try to prioritize things just based on need. We do that with our drainage projects. We're going through that with our sidewalks, and yeah, we try to be thoughtful about, making sure all parts of the city are covered. But when we come up with criteria, or in the case of flooding, it's known flooding, in that sense, somebody on Daniel Island could argue, well, gee, I'm paying my stormwater fee, but I'm not seeing a project over here. Well, that was because the whole build out was designed well in the beginning and doesn't need a drainage project over there. So their dollars are frankly going to pay for projects in other parts of the city. And I view that as okay, because, we're addressing the projects to the places where they're most needed. And we try to do that with the playground replacements, with really all of these different categories of capital projects that we present to you and we're involved in. And so I hear y'all. It's good information to know where things are coming from and where they're going. But I certainly don't want us to get into some parochial, well, gee, I'm putting $10 in, I got to get $10 back out or something like that, because we need to look at the overall real needs of the city and address those in a wise, prioritized manner, and that's what we're trying to do.
And Councilmember Gregory has his hand up, followed by Councilmember Waring.
I definitely agree with you totally, Mayor, that it's most of what we do is based on need. And in my other profession, we had to do it by congressional districts. Okay. When we reported, we had to let each one of those Congress members know how much HUD South Carolina put into their district and for what. But it didn't get down into the like what it looks like we're trying to go here. But we were able to tell each congressional senator how much money we put in their district.
Right.
So grossly, yeah, we can do, but when you get into the nitty gritty of this, and I think what you were saying, Mayor, and I got to use the term, and I think that Amy used it a little while ago. We're one Charleston.
Yeah.
We're one Charleston, and wherever the need is, that's where we focus. And as I look at the projects, Mayor, there is a pretty good distribution, okay, across the board in terms of having representation of funding on all the boroughs. But again, that's based on need. Right. And a lot of it is based on us in terms of council members and how we push for specific projects as well. Okay.
You help to express those needs and highlight.
Exactly. If we don't push them, they're not going to go.
That's right.
If we hadn't pushed Central Park drainage,
that's right.
I don't know how many years, okay, it would not have happened.
That's
you
right.
Just have to be persistent.
Thank you.
Yeah, I think I'm up next. Mr. Mayor, I want to second what you said. You're right about the example you gave about Daniel Island and its drainage needs and versus contributing towards the whole. And I will say this, the appropriation of funding, in particular, the accommodation and hospitality monies has been much more fair under your administration. And I don't need to get brownie points on that. It's just a fact. There were no tourism dollars that came west of the peninsula until I think it started in 2015 when first appropriation was under Mayor Raleigh was to buy the Carl Richardson property out of tourism dollars. Prior to that, it was a big tug of war. Dudley, you remember that, between, in particular, Steve Bedard and myself, and Steve is my friend. But
Yes.
he said tourists didn't go West Ashland. And I took exception to that on the floor of council.
Right.
So this has been a much fairer process, but I'm gonna put some onus on, since we're talking about this, and this is how it happens. That's why this committee you put together, you and Councilman Shayade, this ad hoc committee is just, I think is so invaluable, or so valuable, I should say. But we need to do a better job showing when a person annexes into the city, and Mr. Overcash does a great job with the side-by-side comparison. But I happened to be in conversation a couple of weeks ago and with, and I think I was talking to Kevin Shealy or something about the golf course. And when we annex a piece of property into the city of Charleston, or somebody's talking about annexing into the property into Charleston, we show them the savings on property taxes, I think water and sewer, and that it pretty much ends right there. But there's so many more advantages. I don't play golf, but if you're in the city, you pay green fees are lower than if you're not in the city. I don't know how many parks we got. We got about 140, probably approaching 150 parks in the city, which is a benefit versus some of these other areas. If they have a park, you can count them on one hand. Well, I think we need to put together a comparison that shows we have what 430 or 40 police officers. Obviously, there's no other municipality that can compete with that, and there's certainly a special district that can't compete with that. So, and then obviously we have about 400 plus firemen. So I think we need to improve our comparison on that. But when somebody is thinking about coming in the city and we run a comparison, I think that the features and benefits of being in the city of Charleston ought to be more than 3 bullet points. Follow me? But to put some pressure on all these councilmen that touch James Allen, when Ms. Parker made mention about improvements to the pool over on James Island about a month or so ago, I thought that was something that could be done. And I know we had talked about a bond referendum, but I don't think the whole island or James Island ought to wait to improve that pool until a bond referendum. There was also talk, if you remember, when W. Gresham Meggitt was thought to have been being given to Dudley, I forget the name of the group. It was going to be a historic thing with African American schools prior to September Clark School over there off of Grimble Road. They got a wonderful gym over there. And there was some preliminary conversations on potentially having a gym on that side of the island for the public to use, which would, gyms cost a lot of money. And if we could get if the city could get some common use on that gym over there, it would take some pressure probably off of James Island Rec. And those conversations have gone dormant. And I'm not putting it on you, Mr. Mayor, but because I think some of those are community based, but things like that, to get the pool over at James Island up to running a little bit better, maybe year round, is something that I think can be on a list that doesn't take $100 million bond referendum fix. Just like the bathrooms being put on the golf course over there came from grassroots, and now it's going to be. I know we're going to vote on something this year. So anyway, I throw that out for conversation. For the goodness of a committee like this having been put together, all those conversations would never be held. So
that's right.
Sometimes it's like the birthing process, but I'll tell you what, the community benefits as a result. But overall, city and community benefits. Anyway, thank you.
Well, thank you. And I think that's a wise suggestion to pull together kind of what I would call the full benefit package in addition to the tax and the water and sewer savings that a citizen will accrue by annexing into the city, both in terms of fire protection, insurance costs, police protection, use of our parks, discounts. There's much more to it, and that's a great idea. We'll work on.
Well, one of the bigger ones, believe it or not, is stormwater.
Stormwater.
Those special purpose districts do not even have a stormwater department.
Yeah.
Because we have it pretty good.
Thank you.
Mr. Mayor,
Councilmember Shade.
thank you. Good conversation all around, and appreciate the comments that we have shared. I just want to sort of circle back around a little bit and throw up a yellow warning flag with us. We can play with these numbers a good bit as to how money is received and how money is distributed. And Amy said it very early on for one city. And the reason I bring that up is because if you look at the population distribution, for those of us who represent West Ashley or portions of West Ashley, if you want to play a numbers game and you want to benefit the greater good, the argument could be made the majority of the population's in West Ashley. And I'm not saying that is the criteria we need to be using to do that. The other factor I think we need to take in consideration is that some of these projects, if you do a cost benefit analysis of it, you may be looking at something that is done that's going to benefit a smaller portion of our population, but that project maybe it does impact a smaller portion of our population, but has a great impact overall on the health of the city. And there's some projects that the whole city is going to use and enjoy. Like we make improvements on Joe Raleigh Baseball Park, or if we make an improvement at the municipal golf course, that's something that's not regional. And the perfect example of all of this is they came up on capital projects, which is this thing on West Pawnee Place for drainage fund. It's gonna cost us a lot of money. And it's gonna have a small impact on a small group of neighbors, but it has a huge impact of the overall health of that region, which has this collateral impact that sort of spreads out. And if that neighborhood is healthy, the rest of the city's healthy. So I just sort of want to give us sort of a bird's eye view of how we're budgeting and how we're operating as a city. And it really goes back to this very basic concept that Amy said. We're just one city. It doesn't matter how it's divvied up. At the end of the day, we're all going to benefit from it one way or another. So we have to just be a little careful of how we look at, well, West Ashley brings in X number of dollars, the Peninsula brings in Y number of dollars. Am I getting my dollar for dollar benefit? We really are benefiting totally as a city. So I just wanted to add that 2 cents worth and to sort of close the circle on this very good, I think very, very good and very healthy discussion that we're having about this distribution and income receipt of funds. So thank you all for bringing that up.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
All right. Any other business to come before us? Amy, I came in late. I apologize. Did you finish all your presentation?
I did.
Yeah. Okay.
I'm all set.
Any other business questions, comments, Councilmember Waring?
Yeah, I just got one last thing. Housekeeping for me personally. Who's over building services now?
You mean the building inspections?
Building inspection and all of that. Where you get your
Ken Granada.
Ken Granada. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, no problem. All right, we'll see y'all, some of y'all at another meeting later this afternoon. If not, we'll see you soon, I'm sure. Thank you all. Thank you, Amy.
Thank you.
Thanks, Amy. Bye-bye.
Thank you.